Thank you for all getting up early and attending. We do appreciate it. Any apologies for absence, please?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Sandra Joy.
Any disclosures of personal prejudicial interests?
Yes, please, Chair. I have disclosed personal interest. I have 2 family members that work for the authority.
Thank you, Matt. Any other disclosures, please?
Yeah, Chair, member of Unison.
Any more disclosures? Thank you. Then we'll move on to number 3 on the agenda, which is minutes. Anybody? No? The minutes as from October the 25th, page 1, page 2, and page 3. Any matters arising? May I ask someone to move an accurate record of minutes, please?
Yeah, happy to move, Chair.
Matthew, thank you. Seconder, please. And Terry, thank you. And then we move on to item 4 on the agenda, agile working. I believe you've all received documentation. Hiya, Rachel, good morning.
Good morning, Chair.
Are you here to present this to us? Thank you.
I am. My colleague Jeff Bacon is also here from Head of Property to talk around building considerations should you have any questions when we come to that part of the report. But if you're happy, Chair, I'll take you through the report. Obviously, you'll be aware since March 2020, we've had a large number of the workforce operating remotely, but the council was doing some work prior to the COVID pandemic around what does agile working look like, and had already taken some steps towards understanding what that could mean on a long-term basis. The pandemic came along and has somewhat escalated or enhanced that work, and you've got a copy of both the agile working policy and the home working policy, which were in place prior to the pandemic, but which have subsequently been updated to take account of things that we've learned along the way over the last couple of years. So section 2 talks around why would we want to have an agile working approach in the council, and there's a list of reasons here, particularly when it comes to things like the competitive labour market and being able to attract new talents to the council, and also where we can make best use of assets particularly. We also understand that not all roles can work in an agile way. There will be some that will need to be based at a fixed location in order to deliver services in the best possible way to residents. And there will be some that can do a hybrid, some attendance at an office or a location, and there may be some that could be done entirely remotely as well. There's a list of benefits under section 2, both for the organisation and also for an individual, that we've been able to witness over the last couple of years. And then section 3 goes on to talk around the building considerations. And there's been a huge amount of work done in order to make clean working desk environments, a modern approach to the way in which personal items can be stored. Desks are set up in a uniformed way. There are clear zones and areas in which people understand where they work. And we're able to look now towards reducing our ratio of desks per employees in order to maximise the space that we have. IT kit has obviously been provided to agile workers. There's guidance, there's a whole range of DSE assessments and equipment available should people need once they've completed their assessment, and all of the information and guidance on how to work properly in a remote way is available on StaffNet. People considerations are really, really important, and that health and safety momentum is critical for us to make sure we're not putting people at any undue risk that could be avoided by working remotely as opposed to working from a fixed location. And again, GDPR, data protection, confidential information is all really important that we safeguard against potentially losing that. So there's a range of documentation around guidance and support to make sure staff are working appropriately to maintain those levels of confidentiality. We've been providing training remotely, particularly during the pandemic. There's a huge rise in the amount of e-learning that's available, or remote delivery through Teams perhaps, and face-to-face training has really dropped off. We need to consider how we're going to maximise that and build on it for a long-term hybrid approach. And that long-term hybrid approach is something that service areas are currently working on now. So Cabinet signed off the post-pandemic working model in October, and each service area is now considering, what's my offer in my services that I deliver? What does that look like for my workforce? And which posts do I have that therefore could work in an agile way, or conversely could not? And how can I make that long-term offer so staff now have some stability as we're going forward into a permanent operating model? And the interesting thing for us to learn will be, what do the different service areas put forward in those plans and those proposals, so that we've got one council view around how many people work remotely, how many people work in an office, how many people work in a different site in a different way. You'll see in section 5 that we're considering for the future, what does a remote working hub look like, particularly with the Welsh Government pilot programme that's supporting public sector shared hubs. We've got a few already in place, in addition to the new city centre community hub being developed now, and it will give us an increased number of different ways to work. So not only will you work from a council-owned building or your home, or another venue of your choice that's both confidential and secure, but there are also now going to be a range of different public sector hubs and shared spaces with other sectors that our staff will be able to use. I have put in here under 5.3 just a consideration that however the post-pandemic working model ends up looking like, whatever different options service areas choose for that meet the best needs of their residents and their communities, performance management will be really key in making sure that remote working is a success. So in order to have confidence and assurance that staff are both working as they should be, delivering the objectives that they should be to improve the performance of the council, we have a new product that will be available from the 1st of April when we go live with Oracle Fusion, which will be a performance and goals module as part of that technology suite. And within that, people who are working remotely will be able to have a fully functioning platform that has their objectives, whether they are business objectives or personal development objectives, their monthly check-ins with their manager, the annual appraisal. The whole performance management suite is in there and is going live very soon. So we are looking forward to being able to roll that out. Communication is starting in December with directorates to really engage people in, this is going to be the council's expectation around performance management, and how we can give ourselves some assurance that agile working does not preclude improvement of performance, and actually we'll be able to support it as we go further. I'll pause there, I've talked quite a lot, and take some questions, and as I say, Jeff's here as well to take some any building related elements that you might have as well.
Thank you, Rachel. Any questions, please? Matthew first, please.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. I think I'm not sure if we're all a little bit sick or tired of hybrid working, agile working, all those slogans, aren't we? But it's key, I think, to moving the authority forward. I think it's anything new, really. I think we've had, I'm not sure if we've had hot desking, as it was called in Swansea. I know I've had that in Neath for quite some time, where I don't really get to use the same desk all the time. You know, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Obviously, people are creatures of habit as well, want to go to the same desk, stuff like that. But I think it is key that anyone who is identified that can work from home, whether it be on a permanent basis, you know, I think there's obviously got to be a well-being sort of strategy on that as well, and I'm sure there is. I haven't read that far, if I'm being honest, but I think it's key that you know, that they're not just left in sort of home obscurity as well. Then, you know, that people do link in with them if that's the case, if they are permanently working from home, just as I said, for a well-being, because everyone gets used to the office environment and the camaraderie in the office and the teamwork ethic and stuff like that. And I know from personal experience, it can be quite a lonely place working from home on your own, not really sometimes speaking to anyone for a couple of days for no reason. So I think it's key that we get that part of it right as well.
Can I come back in there, Chair? Absolutely agree with all of the comments you've made there. And in the template that service areas will be designing their post-pandemic working model, those items are of course captured. So in putting forward in my own, I've included in there, and this will be a guidance template for others to consider if they wish to use the same kind of content around things like new starters. You know, we want our new starters to come in and to feel a culture and to work with people and then to understand how we operate. And you can't quite get that from home. And whilst people who've joined the organisation since the pandemic has been in place and haven't had an alternative to do that in the early 2020-2021 years, we have an opportunity to address that now. There are also things like some training that will have to be delivered in person. It's important to be able to do workshops, for example, where teams need to come together and collaborate, whether that's thinking about how to do some service redesign or a learning and development opportunity. There are people who obviously will have their own wellbeing needs on an individual basis, which need to be taken into account as well, whether that's around isolation at home, whether that's around not having a suitable home environment, maybe living in, you know, a house of multiple occupancy, or not being able to have confidential space anywhere. So we need to factor all of those different things in and make sure there is an option for all. And in the templates for that post-pandemic working model guidance, that's included, as well as the equalities aspect around an IIA. So we will be completing those screenings, as well as whatever the design looks like. We need to take into consideration those equalities factors as well.
Matthew,
Thank
do you want
you.
to come back, and then Councillor Hale? Matthew?
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. I just totally agree with what you said, but then it's great that there's already some sort of, you know, the templates being worked on. I was just wondering whether there's going to be any, as we're moving into sort of an economic nightmare for householders and employees and stuff like that, is there going to be any support financially for people who work from home with their, for argument's sake, with their broadband payments and stuff like that? Because or people who haven't got broadband, then, you know, I know there's other things available if you haven't got broadband, but I'm just wondering if there's any support for you know, staff that way.
So in the past 2 years, there's been an option for home workers to claim tax relief. That came to an end in 2022, so that's no longer in place. And the council hasn't accepted a position of reimbursing for any of those utility bills. However, one of the principles in the post-pandemic working model is that, particularly during the cost of living crisis we're in at the moment, staff are supported to be given options to suit them. So if they need to come into a place of work in a council building, whether that's due to those utilities that you mentioned, perhaps broadband, perhaps heating and lighting, then that option should be made available by managers for those staff to do it. And at the moment, we have the available space to do it. And so that's a key principle that the Cabinet have approved, and managers will have to take regard to that. So if someone is struggling for whatever the reason, we have to offer them a safe space to come and work in.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Matt. We'll take Councillor Hale and then Councillor Hennigan, please.
Yeah, just an observation first, and that's that I think I've said this a couple of times. It's really good to see working from home being offered to wider sections of our staff. It always used to be teachers' pet, if you like, that could only work from home. But COVID has opened up agile working to a huge amount of our staff that were, although the facilities were there for one reason or another, whether it's power crazed managers, I don't know, they just wouldn't want their staff working from home. Maybe it's a question of trust. But for years, I think grown-up organisations like BT, I think, were the first to roll out home working for all their staff, which was absolutely tremendous. But that's a grown-up attitude to the workplace, isn't it? So this is really nice to see, although it's taken a pandemic to get it. The other question that I'd ask is, what are we going to do? So have we audited the amount of office space in the local authority that's going to be freed up? And then the second question is, because I think we're developing council hubs in the city centre, what are we going to do with that spare capacity? Thanks very much.
Thank you, Joe. Jeff, would you like to answer, Joe?
Yeah, I've been
Thank
tapped
you.
in.
Good morning.
I've been tapped in now. Good morning, everyone. I've been tapped in on the property side, so that's fine. We have been working on agile strategy for quite a while, and probably quite for some time before the pandemic, actually. Joe, that was why we managed to hit the ground running when it came to the pandemic, in terms of the fact that the agile rollout was in place. Everyone had kit, so everyone could start working from home day one. So we were well set for that. When it comes to auditing the accommodation, absolutely. Let's not forget, we'll be coming up the Civic Centre in its entirety sometime around hopefully early 2025, depending on the public sector hub proposals that are being worked on at the moment. So the work we're doing at the moment in terms of converting the agile space will be completed in the Guildhall end of 2023. So we'll be fully set up from the physical environments to have agile working in the Guildhall, and that will enable us to further release additional space in the Civic Centre. We're already condensing into large amounts, into smaller amounts, sorry, the Civic Centre, which has enabled us to come up with lease agreements to central government departments, which generated much needed income for the council. So that's already happening. I just need to confirm probably what an important point when it comes to the community hub. That's the proposal that's on the ground at the moment, which is going to be, we hope, open and ready for business early 2024. There'll be a limited amount of council accommodation there for key members of staff who will be delivering front of house contact services to the citizens of Swansea. It won't necessarily be a touchdown point for any member of staff, but there may be some small capacity there. But it's not something where we're going to have that sort of that flexible hub offers accommodation for everyone. But yeah, to put your mind at rest, we've done a huge amount over the years in terms of the wider office accommodation strategy. We released Pentlegare Civic Centre, we released 5 floors of Allway. So we've been doing this over the years in terms of rationalising space. Agile working is the final piece of the puzzle, and that will be concluded in terms of all those office space staff in the civic centres to be ready, fit and able to work in an agile manner from end of 23.
Thank you, Jeff. Joe?
Yeah,
would you like to come back quickly?
Only very quickly. Jeff knows my position on and my thoughts on lease agreements. The caveat for me is if lease agreements become permanent arrangements, and there's some real big scare stories in England. A recent court case where an ex-council officer was enabled to buy a community centre, or he leased a community centre. You've most probably read about it. So he leased a community centre, I think in Devon. Don't know how that works, but he managed to get the lease on it with a committee. 3 years down the line, it's the community centre went into a permanent position. So the title deed was given over to these individuals, and it's recently been sold for housing. It's an actual case, Jeff. You can look it up because it recently went to court, and the ability for an individual to do that was heavily questioned by a judge. So that's my concern, is that all these lease agreements that we start to see saying self-management and offering all the support that can be given without any sort of financial input, that those lease agreements at some point, especially long leases, become permanent and the title deeds go. That's my one concern.
Okay, we haven't got that concern with the Civic Centre, Councillor. I wouldn't worry too much about that, but there are ways and means of doing things properly, so you contract out the 1954 Act, all been done, so no concerns there.
No,
Thank you.
It's not just the Civic Centre, Jeff, is it? It's other areas.
Yes, yeah. the first relation at this point. That was the point I'm making. Yeah, I get that.
Okay, thank you both. Councillor Enigan, Terry?
Yeah, I was wondering if we could have some sort of report, you know, in the months, the next couple of months regarding, you know, the contact that the home workers do have with members of the public and local communities. I know we got the coordinators who are doing a fantastic job up in different communities, but I have had a few phone calls, people saying that they couldn't contact different departments. Even had it myself. So I was wondering if some sort of community contact or resident contact report could come to this committee. And last but not least, I was going to ask the questions regarding what kind of allowances are the workers entitled to who are working from home, like telephone, electricity, all them sort of things are being used. And I was just wondering, you know, what sort of package have been offered. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. I think Rachel touched upon that. Rach, do you want to come back on that, please?
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
There isn't a financial package in place for people who are working from home. At the moment, it's very much a free choice. If you want to go and work in the building, you can do that. There is plenty of available space. As I said, there was a tax relief element available in 2020 and 2021. The government brought that to an end for 2022, and so there isn't any financial reimbursement. And we need to be very mindful of impact across our whole workforce. So we've got staff going out to our schools, our residential care homes, depots, etc., who are not ever able to work from home. And we have to balance our reward and recognition, I suppose, across the whole piece and be mindful of the impact in different staff groups. So there isn't a proposal to make any reimbursement for working from home, particularly when people are perhaps saving on commuting as well, and those other groups still have to commute. And so the balance is, if you wish to work from home for the work-life balance that it can give you with not having to commute, or if you wish to come into an office from a heating and a utilities perspective, either option is available.
Okay, Chair.
Could prolong this, but I'll stay a bit now.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So, Rachel, with that request, may we suggest or may we request to have a report back on how we progress? So should we say quarterly, if that's possible, please? Just to keep us, you know, touch base with the policies and how we develop the staff and how we develop the agile working policy and obviously the home working. I've got two quick things for you. Firstly, if there's no financial recognition for those who are working at home currently, and we all know where we are with the economy, so if there was a desire for 50% of those who are currently home working to come back to the workplace, could we accommodate that need currently or that desire currently? And the second thing for me, which Matt touched upon, is the well-being of staff. And, you know, I respect that you've touched upon that contact base and the appraisals and everything will still be in the system. So if I was home working and I log on every day and then for some reason I didn't log on, have we got a system where we can't contact that staff in case of safety or any element of risk? And how would it be highlighted? So if I don't book on today, how is that highlighted to the teams or to the council? And how would we overcome if somebody hadn't or you couldn't make contact with that person who's home working currently? Thank you, Rachel.
If I answer that second part, and then perhaps Jeff can come and talk around the maximisation part, the first element. The wellbeing element doesn't really change for me, whether it's the current setup that we've got or whether it was what we had before most people were home working. That responsibility of a manager to know where their staff are is still in place. So with Teams, for example, if you're a home worker, everybody's using both email and Teams, your calendar must be up to date. Staff are very good at making sure that that is correct, and when they're not supposed to be in, whether it's leave, it's clearly marked in the calendar diary. And then the little icons in Teams, you can see whether somebody is logged on and is working and is available, or whether they're in a meeting, etc. If for some reason a member of staff didn't appear, there was nothing in their diary to indicate that they were due to be off that day, as it was pre-home working, I would expect that manager to then make contact with that individual through their emergency contact procedures, whether that's that they've got a personal mobile telephone for that member of staff, or something else. So I don't really think that the home working changes that. It's the same as if someone didn't arrive at an office physically. I would expect that manager to make contact to understand where the person is. And since I've been here, you know, there have been people who have been off in my team, people who have needed to have time not in the office for sickness, and the procedures have worked quite well from my own first-hand experience. Again, Jeff might want to comment on this as well. We have regular chains of communication. There are set times in the diary each week where different groups will meet, and if it was to be noted somebody wasn't there, we would pick that up and get in touch with them. So I'm confident that that is in place already.
Thank you, Rachel. Jeff?
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Chair. I mean, to give a little bit of confidence, at the moment between the Civic and the Guildhall, we have approximately 1,568 desks, which can be made available for staff. At the moment, we have approximately, at peaks, 160 staff coming to the Guildhall and probably just under 100 coming into the Civic. So we have more than enough desk space. If 50% of the staff wanted to turn up and come into the office, we're planning for a 2-to-1 ratio anyway. So that would mean you have a full Civic and a full Guildhall in terms of desk space that's been allocated. Don't forget, obviously, that even if you were going to basis of 100% wanted to come in the office, not everybody's going to be in work. There's going to be leave, sickness, on-site requirements, all manner of different reasons why they wouldn't come into the office. So we have, quite frankly, more than enough space. When I mentioned the fact we're looking at the Guildhall agile working adaptations to be concluded by the end of 2023, then we look at what we do with the Civic to make sure we are maximising the space we have and making the most efficient use of council resource. So when it comes to a final identification of how much space we actually need, based on, say, a 2-to-1 or possibly less than a 2-to-1, let's see how things pan out over the next year or so. We'll make sure that we're making the best use of our resources and we're not having lots of surplus space sloshing around the place. But yeah, every confidence that if half the staff wanted to turn up, we'd have no issues at all. And just to sort of reinforce Rachel's point, I certainly found during the pandemic the virtual world meant that I was in more contact with my immediate reporting staff on a daily basis, more than a daily basis at the early start of the pandemic, and that's continued throughout. So the way you would interact with your team members shouldn't really change, and if you're finding that someone isn't available, you treat that in the same way you treated in the normal case of events, really.
Thank you both. Thank you. Any more contributions? Any more questions? I'll take this opportunity, as you're both present today, to thank you for the work that's been done regarding agile working. It ticks a lot of boxes. Obviously, there are still a few concerns and a few questions that have been raised today, but we work together and we eliminate the concerns. And obviously, it ticks a lot of boxes, you know, with regard to flexible working, the work-life balance elements, equalities, you know, and when we talk about costs, probably reduced travel at the minute is a major one to a lot of people, because we've got a lot of people who don't live in the city who have to travel to and from and, you know, live quite a few miles away. So when we talk about home working, there are cost savings, but I think we do need to be considerate where we are with utilities and as we progress with the economy. So there's a lot of benefits for the business, but there's a lot of benefits for our staff. And I agree with Joe, you know, yes, probably the pandemic did give us that little push that we needed. but I do respect what Jeff has said, that obviously we were working on these agenda items previously, and that's how we could touch base when the pandemic hit us. So thank you both. We look forward to the next report, which I don't know if you agree, Rachel, probably quarterly.
Yeah, so would February from now be an appropriate date to schedule it for?
Okay, thank you, Rachel. And that's it, if there's no more contributions. Thank you. So we'll move on now to the work plan. That's item 5 on the agenda. The next meeting is scheduled for 20th of December. We're back at 1400, guys. So you can have a lay-in, Terry. And we've got recruitment and selection scheduled on the work plan for the 20th of December. And then we go into January, 24th of January, which will be 1400 again, currently. And we'll be working on the transformation element of the work plan. Marlin, good morning. Is there anything you'd like to contribute at this time?
Good morning, Chair. No,
Morning.
nothing from me today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more contributions?
Yeah, man.
Who's that, please?
Indeed. Sorry,
Joe.
Joe.
Joe?
Yeah. Yeah. Hiya. Do you think we can track the our estate as we move through our work plan? So Jeff could come back and give us an update every maybe 2 months.
Jeff, are you still with us? Joe, I'll write to Jeff. There's a
If
lot
you
of
could.
feedback. Joe, go on, I'll knock my mic off, you speak.
No, sorry. I was only just going to say, if you could write to Jeff so we can keep an eye on the estate portfolio and to see what's being leased, what's being long leased and what's being sold.
Joe, I'll write to Jeff and ask if it's under our remit, and obviously I'll ask the question and request that if it is under our remit that Jeff comes back probably quarterly, if that's okay.
That'd be fine, yeah. Thanks.
There
very
we are.
much.
Thanks, Joe.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Joe. So nothing else for today? Thank you all for your attendance. I appreciate it. The meeting's now closed. Keep safe and look after yourselves.
Thank you, Chair.